take as many hostages as possible and commit to a protracted standoff. The plan specifically required the terrorists to commit martyrdom at the end, causing massive carnage among the civilian hostages. The Islamic jihadist leadership in Chechnya stressed the importance of hostage-taking because such operations take time to resolve. With the international media gathered in St. Petersburg for the summit, the operation would attract unprecedented international attention, shaming President Putin and his fellow anti-jihadist guests, particularly President George W. Bush and Prime Minister Tony Blair. The alternative plan addressed the possibility that the strike team might fail to breach the security cordons around St. Petersburg, or that they might arouse suspicion before they reached the city. Under such circumstances, the terrorist team was to proceed to the nearest small town and conduct a localized version of the plan. They would first rocket the center of the town in order to attract attention and sow confusion. Then the terrorists would seize a school or a hospital full of hostages, barricade themselves, and maintain a standoff for as long as possible. At a given time, they would provoke a clash with the security forces that would culminate in the mass murder of the hostages and the martyrdom of the terrorists. Throughout the standoff, the terrorists were instructed they should demand access to foreign officials as well as both Russian and foreign media, ostensibly to be used as mediators, but actually to serve as instruments for transmitting the terrorists' message to the world. Regardless of whether the terrorists reached St. Petersburg, both the Chechnya-based jihadist leadership and the supreme al-Qaeda leadership were certain that such an audacious strike would provoke massive retaliation by the Russian military and security forces. The leaders hoped that such a Russian strike would antagonize the civilian population of Chechnya and the northern Caucasus as a whole, enough to scuttle the trend of pacification and normalization that had dampened the Islamists' momentum in the region in recent years. The leaders looked forward to the spectacle of casting the northern Caucasus back into the flames of jihad. In the first half of June, the region's most prominent Islamist jihadist commander, the native Chechen terrorist Shamil Basayev, conducted a series of meetings with his senior commanders in Chechnya and southern Russia to begin implementing the strike. The most important of these was a war council, convened in Krasnodar Krai, southern Russia, with a group of amirs, senior commanders, based in the krais of Adugaya, Karachayevo, Cherkessia, Krasnodar and Stavropol. In that meeting, Basayev outlined his plans and demanded that the amirs start preparing the logistical and transportation infrastructure required to smuggle the terrorist team deep into the heart of Russia, with luck all the way to St. Petersburg. During this planning phase, however, the supreme al-Qaeda leaders warned the Chechen jihadists that US and British intelligence personnel, the latter feared most, would be taking extra precautions to prevent any viable threat to the Western leaders. The Islamist jihadists would have to launch a major diversion in order to attract the attention of the intelligence services, both Russian and Western, and perhaps cause friction between them. The diversion should be conducted outside Russia and the Caucasus, the supreme leaders dictated, but the Chechen leadership must seem to be directly involved in, if not responsible for, the operation. After some deliberation, the leaders settled on a strike in Iraq, where trusted jihadist resources in the Baghdad area could be activated and directed on a moment's notice. On June 8, Basayev started laying groundwork to create the impression that the Chechens were responsible for the upcoming decoy operation, even though his forces would actually have nothing to do with it. He convened an urgent commanders' meeting in Chechnya, knowing full well that Russian intelligence would learn about the content soon afterward. Basayev also made sure that a report on the meeting would be transmitted to his allies in the Middle East through channels likely to be intercepted by Western intelligence services. In the meeting, Basayev announced that Chechen special services would now be used abroad to arrest and kill international terrorists and war criminals, i.e. the Russians, who are responsible for the genocide of the Chechen people and have been sentenced to death by the Sharia court.